Welcome to the Wisdom of Women show. Business is the most powerful, innovative force in the world. And with visionary women leaders at the helm, we can lead in both impact and profit. Today's world needs the wisdom of women in business. This is why we are here to help women grow. Are you already a successful visionary woman founder leading a high impact company? The Wisdom of Women show is designed just for you. We are a community of women founders, investors, and leaders who want to see you rise. Join us as we unlock opportunities and prosperity for women-led enterprises. The future of business is women. Are you ready? Welcome to the Wisdom of Women show. We are dedicated to amplifying the voice and wisdom of women in business. A new model of leadership is emerging, and we are here today to amplify the voices of women leading the way. Thank you for joining us today as we illuminate the path to unlocking opportunities and prosperity for women-led enterprises by amplifying the voice and wisdom of women. So today I have a very special guest for you that I curated, I looked for, because I really want to be able to bring to this conversation what Viktoria Kharlamova has to offer us. So Viktoria is a powerhouse growth advisor with a track record of driving impactful product-led growth through innovating onboarding, monetization, and retention strategies for your customers. She has transformed the growth trajectories of high-profile tech companies, including Rask AI, Taskade, PandaDoc, and Grammarly. At Miro, Viktoria was a founding member of the growth team where she spearheaded key innovation initiatives in activation, monetization, and virality. Don't we all want that, where our products and services just find their way to the perfect customer? So over her 5-year tenure, she led over 200 growth experiments, because I really want to get in there, Viktoria, and learn about what that means to have a growth experiment. She doubled virality and launched major features that significantly boosted user engagement and revenue. We want that. A sought-after mentor, Viktoria has elevated product managers from industry giants like Semrush, Apple, and TopTal, helping them achieve better business outcomes. She's also a maven course creator. She empowers others by sharing her expertise on user onboarding and activation. And outside of work, Viktoria is a relentless adventurer. I was just catching up on her, doing her major travels right now, having traveled to 53 countries and scaled peaks like Kilimanjaro. She's a sports enthusiast. She thrives on new challenges from wake surfing to snowboarding. Holy moly. Welcome, Viktoria, to the Wisdom of Women show.
Thank you, Coco. Happy to be here today, and super excited to share my knowledge about product-led growth and other stuff.
Wonderful. So, as I always like to ask at the beginning, because we need more women to show up at the top of the business channels, and maybe you don't have a business book you're going to recommend, but what is one book written by a woman that has significantly influenced your life?
That's a great question, first of all. I would say that I was thinking about that 1 week when I got that, and I couldn't choose one. So I really wanted to share 2 books that really influenced my life a lot. The first book is Defining Decade from 20 to 30 that is the book from Meg Jane. And that was a great book that I read when I was 21 or something. And that really influenced how I behave in this time period of my life and how I invested heavily into having a lot of experience in tech and product growth and other. And there is another book which is not like business focused. It's rather the book that I read when I was about like 15 years old. That's Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. That's really was my favorite book when I was that age, and now it's also one of my favorites. And Scarlett was a real inspiration for me. She was just unstoppable into getting what she wanted, and that was a real inspiration for me. So that's why I also wanted to highlight that one.
I love it, Victoria. So I have a book club, the Wisdom of Women book club, and I always like to
Nice.
take. I always put up different books every week. We launch a new book, and so I love to take these recommendations from these interviews, and then I often include them in a future week. And I have to tell you, I had another founder on a few weeks ago. Fran Mayer, who is the founder of
Mm.
Baby Quip and a co-founder of Match.com, and her book was Gone with the Wind. And
Oh, that's nice.
we talked about Scarlett, and so I think there's something to be said for that. And it's a book I might have to pick up again. I don't know defining decade from 20 to 30, and I'm gonna totally check that out. And there's some young women in my life who I think could be really turned on by that idea. And I love to hear that it was a profound um, impact for you. That's wonderful. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, happy to hear that Gone with the Wind was mentioned by somebody else and affected somebody else's life. Yeah, because that's great.
I love it. Yeah, so Scarlett is an avatar for all of us, I think, in different ways, because she was really ahead of her time, right?
Yeah, that's
No
true.
problem
That's true.
owning her power and being bossy. I love that, right? So tell us, Victoria, you have such a specific knowledge that I think is heartily missing in many companies, especially companies where growth is stalled. And I have a saying I like to say that growth is a puzzle you can solve, but you have to have clarity about what those puzzles are and then how to create innovation cycles and solve them, right? And when I learned about you and what you do, I was like, oh, this girl, she knows how to solve the puzzle of growth. So tell us about you. You have a deep background in product-led growth, and just tell us about your story and how you got to where you are now and why you do this kind of work.
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me tell my story. I guess that I'm in the product growth for about like 8 years.
Mhm.
And I started my journey at the cloud startup that was not big, but it was focused on the B2B. And I started like a marketing manager as well as like partly covering some growth and product initiatives. And then I moved to Miro. I joined Miro when it was a small startup, so about like 50 people or something. And I was the founding member of the growth team, so the first growth product manager. I was leading the whole funnel, like activation, monetization, retention, virality, everything. And by that time, I really got a lot of experience and the founding experience in my further journey, just because I realized that growth is something that I'm passionate about. Growth is something that really make me really inspiring in terms of like previously actually I was thinking about joining McKinsey and I even got the offer from them, but I decided to move into IT and not to lose the opportunity at Mira. And when I got this extensive experience in product-led growth from a startup to unicorn, I decided that I really want to scale it and try to help other companies to get value from that, to grow their revenue, to grow their products, and to provide value to more users. And when I was still working at Miro, one of the product managers from PandaDoc just reached out to me and asked to help with the onboarding experience. It was about like 2 years when I've been working at Miro. And we tried to had several sessions that worked great for them. And I realized that why should I spend all my time, all my focus just on growing one product if I could help like different products grow. And that was the time when my advising journey started. So focusing on Miro growth, I was also helping other companies to grow their products by implementing great user onboarding experience, by implementing effective monetization, driving retention and virality, and also helping them to hire great product leaders to their companies. And 2 years and 2 months ago, I left Miro. And I had a really complicated question. So if I want to join another company in order to drive product growth, I actually had several offers by that time from Flow. I had a discussion with Canva, with Notion, so pretty big companies. But something was not like, it was a sign for me that I don't want to join full-time position. Maybe I should give advising a chance and try to build my life in this way. By that time, I also read a great book, Designing Your Life. And I just realized that I should design my life a little bit differently, or at least try and give it a chance. So I decided to try advising for 1 year as a like main focus plus mentorship of the product leaders, because it's also something that I'm passionate about. And then I realized that it worked, and I really want to follow this path, a kind of like pathless path from the beginning, because there are not a lot of growth advisors who are working on with different products, and it was a new sphere, a kind of. But after like 2 years and 2 months, I realized that that's exactly what I want to do. And that's exactly how I want to work, at least now, helping different companies, helping different product leaders around the world to drive better business outcomes, to provide more value to the users of the products they work on. And that's how how it really helps me to drive better outcomes from my time and from my life, because I could provide results in different companies, as well as like it fits ideally with a lot of travel, which I'm passionate about as well.
Oh, I just love that your story weaves in how you are, how you want to live and what your mission is as a person, and how you can create this all in one, it all comes together. We don't have to choose between one or the other. Sometimes we just have to be creative and innovative. And then, suddenly we can do what we imagined we'd want, but didn't know how. So I want to also just point out that I agree. There's very few women in this particular field. And I had to look for you. I searched for you because I really wanted a woman to be this voice, of course, because that's what I do, right? And it reminded me of how important it is that we look for talent beyond the ones that just come up first. We have to look for talent that that is a different voice, because it doesn't mean just because you're not at the top of the list. I mean, McDonald's doesn't make the best burger in the world, even though it sells the most, right? So if you want to find the best burger, you kind of have to look for it. And so I was excited when I found you, and I could tell by what you were doing in the world, and that you have some real chops. So tell us, at Miro, you contribute to the company's unicorn status. So going from like, a smaller company to unicorn status by driving virality and retention. Could you share some specific tactics that founders can use to boost their virality and retain their users?
I would say I would also add that at Miro, I was also focused a lot on activation. And for
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
like retention is just impossible without proper activation. So
Well,
coming
so,
back,
so tell us what all these words mean. Like, give us some
yeah, sure.
definitions, right? Like,
Yeah,
start
sure.
from scratch so that somebody who's never heard activation, onboarding, like give us some like the 101 of your world, of your empire.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So first of all, like onboarding is the experience of the user when onboarding and activation journey is like when the user is just starting getting to know the product, getting the first value. And activation is about creating a habit around core value proposition of the product. So let's imagine like Spotify. It's about like listening to music. And in case we talk about the onboarding experience, it's like starting on the like app store, then you're like downloading the app, you're registering the app, you're having a first session, you're trying to find the music you want to. And that's where first session onboarding gets ended because you found the music, you listen to that. But activation journey is much longer because it's all about creating a habit around listening this music on the app, and
Yeah.
that's where activation is happening. If we're coming back to retention is like when the user is returning to the product and getting this value. Virality, it's a different thing. It really depends on what kind of virality, but overall it's about when one type of users who are already your users acquire more and more users to your product that are relevant one. So I would say that's the short vocabulary of what I'm doing.
Wonderful. And so walk us through each piece and share with us, like when you meet with a new company, what are the questions you ask? What are the things you're thinking about? How do you analyze each of the steps, and how do you help make them better?
Mhm. Yeah, great question. So I usually start with the metrics, just because metrics is something that could tell you what is happening much better than anyone else. So usually I check the regular funnel of the metrics, such as like conversion rate to registration, funnel of activation metrics, retention metrics, conversion rate to pay, churn. And usually, depending on the different sphere, depending on business model, depending on product, I could say if these metrics are fitting the benchmarks or where does the product have growth opportunities and growth averages. Because usually it's pretty obvious where you should focus on. And I could say that in the majority of the cases, the
Yeah.
problem is in the onboarding and activation. Just because onboarding and activation are really the base for your product growth. And if you're implementing product-led growth, you really should start from product culture and other stuff, but user onboarding and activation are the base for your growth because monetization, virality, retention, nothing is possible without great user onboarding and activation. So usually we focus on that, building some customer journey maps, identifying like opportunities and metrics. CGM is helping us understand what kind of problems users facing and explain. So numbers could tell us like what is happening, but only users could tell us why this is happening. That's why it's really important to enrich our data with user problems in order
Mhm.
to understand what exactly we should do in the products.
Makes sense. So, what if you don't have at the beginning of that? You talked about metrics. So, how important metrics are from the very beginning. You can't really diagnose or see where the funnel's blocked, right? If you don't have the numbers. So, what's a first good step for founders to help them get their numbers in order? Do you experience
Mm-hmm.
that? Do you ever experience that where you come in and they're like, I don't know my numbers. I don't have all this data. Where do I get this data?
Yeah.
Like, does that happen?
I would say every company I've
Yeah.
worked with
Yeah.
has problems with data. Every,
Yes.
because like it's not perfect everywhere. And the first thing that every founder should remember, that's okay. 20% of the data is usually giving you like 80% of information, and that's enough. You
Yes.
don't need perfect data in order to grow your product.
Yeah.
It's not possible to
Right.
have it like perfect. And I would say that you should have the main metrics along your funnel just to be sure that everything is working correctly and monitor them, such as like what I mentioned, conversion rate to registration, activation funnel, dividing into three main steps: setup moment, aha moment, and habit moment. Conversion rate to pay, as well as like churn metrics and retention metrics. That's the basic that you should have. And on the go, you will add more and more based on the kind of questions you are asking on a regular basis. So, but be sure to have these ones. Even if you don't have it, sometimes I start working with companies and they don't have activation metrics, and that's okay. Just because sometimes if you just take a look at their onboarding flow and say you need to fix this and this, just because I know that it's working not effectively and I don't need numbers for that, it's kind of like
Experience.
expert assessment. Yeah, experience and expert assessment from my perspective.
Mhm.
But in case you want to work on the long time period and get great results in numbers, we really need to understand what numbers are now, because we need to move from this point A to point B. But in order to move to point B, we need to understand what is point A. That's
Mhm.
why numbers matters a lot here, sure.
And what do you see in the onboarding piece are the tactics that often need improvement? What do you see are the common adjustments that you advise in the onboarding piece?
Yeah, great question. At the same time, it really depends on the company's size, company,
Yeah.
like focus area, everything. Let me share something generic and then we could specify it a little bit. So first of all, every person who's working on onboarding experience should remember onboarding is not the first session. And that's the main mistake that I've seen everywhere. So first session onboarding, some tool tips or tutorials, that's just a tiny piece of your onboarding experience. It
Mm.
starts on the Google search, then it's website, then it's registration, first session, path to first value, and path to habit creation.
Mhm.
And their user onboarding ended when the user became paid, and there is customer onboarding, and it's also onboarding. And onboarding to the new features, it's also onboarding. So you should remember that you need to think about long-term education a lot. It's not about just tool tips on the first session. And you need to look at this experience holistically, just because in order to drive, for example, habit creation, you need to start working from the early beginning, from the Google search, from the website, and everywhere, in order to communicate your main product value properly.
That's wonderful. It's really exciting to hear you talk about it and to know that you exist in the world and can help us, all of us, with this kind of specific journey. So, if you are a company, you're a founder, and you need help with this, what do you so you have your onboarding, and then so talk to us more about what activation looks like, and how you enrich activation. Like, what are the mechanics of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So first of all, activation. This is the metric that could be pretty complex on the later stages of the company. But in case you're on an early stage, I would recommend to highlight it as an aha moment, and use just this metric. And this is the metric and the time when the user experiencing the core value of the product. For example, like coming back to Spotify, you listen for the first time for the 7 minutes some
Yeah.
kind of music. And that's where the user is getting this value. And in order to define this metric for
Yes.
the first time, first of all, you need to, I would say every founder and every like company member should know like what is the value of the product when they just starting creating that. So it's your hypothesis. It's research of the users, because you need to ask the user what they think is the main value and where they're getting that. And in case you have data, it will be also great, just because in case the users reaching this aha moment, the conversion rate to pay is much higher for these users, as well as like long time retention. So like sharing it in a simple words, in case I experience the value, in case I listen to music for 7 minutes, I will have much higher probability to start paying for this company. And I have much higher conversion to returning in 2 months, in 3 months, in 6 months, and further.
Wonderful. So, and it sounds like you make a hypothesis about what you think your value is, and then you continue to iterate and experiment. So you talk about you've led over 200 growth experiments in your career. So what does that mean for companies just starting with experimentation? What are the most critical experiments they should prioritize to get going?
Yeah, all data experiments, I would say it could even more than 300 at Miro.
Yeah.
So the majority of these experiments were A/B tests, but it doesn't matter that every company should run A/B tests, because in my opinion, it's just A/B test is just one of the ways you could experiment. It could be just launching the feature, it could be a beta test group, it could be any other option of the experimentation. And in order to run these experiments right, I would say you should remember that you shouldn't run A/B test just for running A/B test, because in case you don't have enough users, that's okay. Use other options. First thing. Another, you're not here to run experiments. You're here to drive your product growth. So don't forget about the main thing you're here to do. And sometimes you can test several hypotheses and several solutions at once, especially in case you're an early startup and you don't have some time to get these results. So use the qualitative methods, just because they could give you a lot of information. So be sure, like user research, I would say that in case the onboarding and the activation is the base of your product growth, even the base of the base is the user research. And just because in order to grow your products in the long-term period, you really need to know exactly who are your users, how they behave, how they react on this or that changes in the product, and why. And this understanding of the why will definitely help you drive your product growth. As for like coming back to experimentation, I would also add 2 things. So in case you need to prioritize some experiments, prioritize experiments on your user onboarding and activation, because you will not mistake with that, because you will always have something to work on here. And about prioritization, I would also recommend not to use RICE framework.
Not to use what? I'm sorry, not to use what?
RICE framework. RICE framework is the framework for prioritization, so reach, impact, confidence, and effort. I don't like that, just because it's so subjective. One person could say like, I'm confident about that 7, or I'm confident about that 3, and there is not a lot of reasoning behind that. And that's why I could actually share my framework for prioritization, and maybe you could also add it somewhere to the materials, just because I believe it's working great. And I implemented that into more than 20 different companies. Just feel free to copy that and change it a little bit by yourself, because confidence, they are defined by different sources of user research, and different companies have different sources. It's okay if you have like sales team and they provide you with a lot of different like insights, customer success team, support team, or any other sources. So every framework, I really believe, should be personalized based on the company needs. And happy to share that with you later.
We would love that, because I think so much of the time it's we're trying to figure out which puzzle to solve, and having a set of priorities, and if you're depending on how big your company is and how much resources and your team, right? Because a lot of times if you don't have, one of the recommendations I always make and I put in my book is around, you need a data file on your team at the beginning, like find somebody who is good at collecting data, because you need to have the data and it needs to be consistent, whether you're collecting daily or weekly. You need to be looking at data, and you can't unlock those puzzles if you don't have the data. The other thing, and I'd love for you to speak to this a little bit, is like whenever I talk to founders who don't collect a lot of data, there's a lot of assumptions around what is working and what they should do and where they should spend their money, right? And usually it's more leads at the top. And in my experience, when you actually have the data, it tells a very different story. You want to talk to your experience or some examples around that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. At the same time, I would divide data into two buckets. So the first one is metrics, and the second one is qualitative data with users. And you really need to collect both in order to drive your product growth. Because like what is happening, why this is happening, and you're understanding what you're going to do with that.
That's wonderful. So like you might think that you need there's the numbers and then there's quality, right? So you might have tons of new subscribers, but if they're not taking the next step and understanding and taking value and opting into whatever, then the number is not important, right? But you might need a much smaller number in order to get the value. And so what I've found, and like in my experience, it's different than a product that's like a product. It's a technology product. I have a healthcare company, right? And
Mm,
one of our biggest constraint is hiring enough nurses. And so we
mm,
have a funnel that is all about recruiting, right? And
mm,
so everybody who doesn't study data immediately says, well, you just need to have more ads for the jobs. But yet when you look at the data, what ends up happening is you start to seeing, well, the first step is that they find the ad. Do they click on it? Is the job posting of value to them? Or do they leave? Then they actually apply. Then do they actually, how quickly do we interview them? And what's that interview experience? And what's the experience of them signing up to interview? Right. And do we get tons on here, but then they stop because the interview sign up experience is so bad that, like, keep pouring more on top. It's not going to help, right? You got to fix that
mm,
piece to make it easier for them to make the interview. And then, oh, like in our business, what we found is that we got really good performance up until the day they had to come to orientation. And then it was like this huge block of like fall off. So before we put a lot of money into the top of the funnel, spending more on ads for the recruiting, we needed to fix this middle where they were dropping off because they weren't coming to orientation and getting out into the field, right? So
yeah.
totally different business model, but same.
Yeah, I think the problem is just describing the same way. You have a bottleneck and you really need to find out why this is happening.
Yes.
That was, I think it's working almost, some things are the same in different products
Yes.
because in all my experience, I've been working with more than 40 different kind of products, and some things are the same for every. And some things are really different based on the type of the product, business model, industry, and everything. And but understanding this why in order to grow, understanding where is the bottleneck is the approach that is working everywhere for sure.
I love that, because then once you solve it, then you can start to decide where to pour money in, right?
Yeah,
Right. And then you can see the results start to happen, right? And
yeah, that's
yeah,
true. I would also add here that the the biggest thing that you could do as well is to scale this knowledge to the whole funnel. Let me explain one of the examples that I had at Miro, a pretty obvious one. So when we've been running some usability tests and interview, we noticed that users don't see the tutorials and tips that we've been showing in the first session onboarding, just because the content on the board was really colorful, but the tips were white, and nobody's seen that. And that was happening for some time periods. And we had this hypothesis. And coming back to the growth, I really want to focus everybody on how to formulate hypothesis correctly. So everybody is usually like formulated hypothesis, like if we do something, we will get this. But in order to grow your product, it's better to focus your hypothesis on the users. And it's better to formulate hypothesis. We believe that users do something because of the reason. And this reason is the most important thing. And for example, coming back to the example from Miro, we formulated the hypothesis. We believe that users do not notice our first session onboarding because the content on the board is too colorful and our tutorials are white. And we actually created several solutions to this hypothesis. We decided, hey, we could make the tutorials and tips like dark blue. We could make some hovers. We could change the color or make it like gray or any other. And we decided to make it dark blue. And we actually not just made it dark blue on the first session, but we made it on the whole product. And we've noticed that the impact was not only on the first session that users started to notice more tutorials and more tips and engage with them, and that influenced activation. But this knowledge really helped us to scale it to the whole funnel. So the users who are having customer onboarding, they also seen these tips better, as well as like any other onboardings of the new features. So in order to grow your product, it's really important to formulate hypothesis in this way, because you could scale the knowledge, not only impact one part of experience, but all others.
Wonderful. I love this. So, okay. So what is a final piece or nugget that you would like to offer to those women founders listening who are struggling to grow? What would you be like to share as your final words of wisdom?
That's a great question. I would say there are a lot of things, but I would define three main. So first of all, when you're thinking about your product growth, think about it as a system. And every part of the system is working and depending on each other. It could be activation, like acquisition, monetization, retention, reality. Everything is working together. And when you're working on one part, think how it could affect other parts, because it's a real system and it's a real complex system. Another thing is we didn't touch monetization, so I would also add a couple of words about that.
Yes, please.
So yeah, when working on monetization, remember about four main things. So first of all, your business model should be optimized for your products, industry, use case, and users. Provide enough value, but not enough to make users start paying you. You need to design your plans when monetizing users based on their ideal customer persona and provide them with clear differentiators. Be sure to use localization in your monetization. It's like sounds strange, but at the same time, in different countries, in different regions, there are different payment systems, there are different like behaviors of the users. So be sure to use that in your monetization as well. And the third thing I would say, in order to build an effective product-led growth, there are three things you should be taking care about. Product culture, when everybody in the company and everything is built around the product, and the product is the main value that you're producing, not sales, not like support, nothing but the product. Second thing, like user research is your daily work. especially on the early stage. Be sure to run it correctly. Be sure to do it on a regular basis and use different sources of user research, like usability tests, interviews, session recordings. All that matters a lot in order to see the full picture, because all of them could provide you parts of the picture, but only all of them together could make you understand the user behavior fully.
Mhm.
And last but not least, I would say that take care about your use cases. When you're working on the product and there's the value that you are providing to the users, check it before building MVP that the use case you have have a real like frequency is pretty good. Just because based on that, you could build a product that is subscription based, that could be growing fast and easy to use and providing a lot of value to the users. Or in case the frequency is not so regular, for example, Airbnb, it's not so regular, a lot of other examples, not so regular,
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
will need more effort from your side. And
Yes.
in this case, think about different use cases. So your product could be more horizontal and cover several use cases. Yeah, that's the three things that I wanted to share.
I love it. So how can people start to find out more about what all these wonderful topics that you've brought to us? I know you have a free report on your website, right? And it's the state of product onboarding, and we'll put this in the show notes. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, sure. That's the research that I ran together with my colleague on the onboarding. And we researched more than 80 different companies, international companies around the world, in order to find best practices, in order to find what worked, what didn't work, what are the products with the best onboarding experience, what are the insights they got, how usually the growth teams are built, and everything around that. So it's pretty extensive information set about user onboarding. I also have my blog on the Substack. Just remember about that. I also share some useful information there, and soon I'm going to post the article about hypothesis. So that could be also useful for everybody who's working on product growth, just because, as I mentioned, the framework that you use for the hypothesis formulation really defines all your cycle of experimentation and all your product growth. Yeah,
Wonderful. So you can find that on Substack, and I'll put a link in there for in
yeah,
the show notes as well. And you have a website, correct? And I'll put that in as well. And you have a course on Maven. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that course because it could be a really wonderful entryway for a lot of our listeners. And I am considering this course for one of my employees.
yeah, that's great. Happy to hear that. So this is the course that I created together with my colleague Kate. We've been working together. She mostly focused on design. I was mostly focused on the product, but together we've been focused on growth in order to create best-in-class onboarding experience for Miro. And then we decided to gather all our knowledge on activation and onboarding experience and share it with others. And the mission of this course is to help others to create great user onboarding experience and activation as the base of your product growth. So we have a 3 weeks course where we have some interactive sessions with invited guests with us, where we share a lot of frameworks, a lot of cases from our practice. So in case you really want to create a system around how to create great user onboarding, in case you want to see what mistakes we've made and not repeat them, you can join this course for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds really, really valuable. And what I like about this course is that it's a short period of time. It's 3 weeks, but it's very concentrated work. So it's not like 1 hour a week. It's a bulk of work, but so you really focus your energy and dive in deep and come out on the other side with some actionable new ways of improving your funnel, your onboarding
Yeah.
experience. Um, and I just think it's a great way. Like I said, I'm thinking about having one of my teammates participate in this so that they can learn these new skills that can then amplify the growth of my company, right? So I
Yeah, that's true.
right. And so for our listeners, that could be they want to take it, you want to get in there and try it out. And then you work with people, right? You are an advisor. So what does that look like?
Yeah, that's true. So usually the companies coming to me in order to help with onboarding, with monetization, or implementing holistic product-led growth. I usually work with founders or product leaders and help them together. We are defining where does the product have like growth opportunities, what exactly you need to build to create the system of growth.
Mhm.
uh, what are the processes that are missing, what are the processes that are incorrect. So we are launching together a lot of experiments, we are checking the results, we are learning more about the users, we are building growth models, growth strategies. I would say it really depends on the kind of the company, product, industry, everything. So
Mhm.
usually all we are doing is pretty customizable,
Yes,
just
yes.
because every product is unique and every users of the every product are unique, and you really need to understand both in order to understand what exactly should be done. And the approach here is pretty simple. We are having like 1 or 2 sessions per week, and it's retainer, and
Mhm.
we are discussing different questions. We are discussing like growth models, we are discussing what are the problems with onboarding, and during this time period founders or product leaders implementing everything that we are discussing, and we are keep moving to the better outcomes of the metrics, and providing better value to the users.
I love that, right? So it's an accessible format for any founder, right? Because then you
Exactly.
whether you're doing a bunch of the work or somebody on their team is, you can really get that coaching and support and the brilliance of you and your partner in helping really do this. Is there a particular size of company that or like what's the ideal moment
Mhm.
for a
I was
customer for a founder to decide to work with you?
Yeah, that's a really good approach when you're hiring a person and a specialist who already went through the stages. And as soon as been working with numerous products, it's pretty clear for me what kind of mistakes we could not make and what we should do in order to be faster into growth. As for the companies, I would say when you reach the product market fit, it's
Mhm.
when your retention just got to plateau, and it's pretty
Mhm.
obvious that the value that you're providing to users, they stick to the product, but you want to scale it and you want to have more users, you have to monetize more users, you have to onboard them better. So that's the time after like getting to product market fit when you should focus on the product-led growth strategy in case your product is relevant for that. Sometimes I could say that the problem could be earlier. So your users are not retaining and stick to the product because you have not great user onboarding experience.
Yeah.
So if you are coming to user onboarding experience and like forgetting about PLG, user onboarding should be started working on like when you just launching your product from the
Yeah.
early beginning, because that could define if you are getting to product market fit or no.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited that we got to talk today, Victoria. And I hope that all of our founders listening will check out your free report, go visit your website, go to Substack. All these things are in the show notes. And this Maven course, I feel like is a really good idea, right? To help us really break down what's working and what isn't, and then see results, right? See growth, have breakthroughs. I think that's pretty
Yeah, that's
awesome,
true.
right? We want
That's
to see
true.
more women founded companies become the unicorns of tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully.
Right. And my vision is just as many Microsofts and Teslas and Walmarts are founded and led by women. And
Yeah.
the Fortune 500 is half led by females and by other underestimated founders. That's the vision, right?
Yeah, that's true. I would also want to see more founders among women, just because I would say that about 80% of the founders I'm now working with are men, just because it's not about me choosing, but just because of the reality. And I'm excited and super happy in case we have more founders, women.
Yes, I agree. We only have 3% of women who make it over $1 million in revenue, and there's almost twice the number of women starting businesses. So there's a disconnect, and I would say you and your program are the connection point to help overachieve those hurdles because we get stuck and we don't get to the next phase. And we are solving the problems of the world, Victoria. So,
Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, happy to contribute to such a great mission.
yeah, thank you. So, thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us on the Wisdom of Women show. Thank you for the illuminating the path of growth and prosperity for women-led enterprises. We value your experience and your wisdom. The world is made better by women-led business. So let's all go make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today. It was a pleasure to share my experience.
Yay. Is your business ready to accelerate? Take the Business Acceleration Readiness Assessment today and find out now at www.aforceforgood.biz/quiz. Take the 5-minute assessment and you will receive an instant response on the 4 essential areas of alignment needed for business growth. You will also receive 4 free tools specific to your situation to help you and your team accelerate success right away. Go to www.aforceforgood.biz/quiz and find out what you can do to accelerate, impact, scale, and profit today.